Welcome to Bitcoin Live on the Thursday evening. With us in the show is Jesse Morris, the CEO of EnergyWeb. Welcome to Bitcoin Live.
Welcome.
Hi guys, thanks so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Well, the pleasure is all ours. We've been waiting for this moment for weeks. I'm a little bit nervous. So let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got involved in crypto?
Sure. So as you can probably tell from my boring and straight accent, I'm sitting here in the US, so I'm an American guy. And funnily enough, for this audience, I'm actually an energy and climate guy first, and technology and crypto and blockchain guy second. And so by way of background, which would probably be useful for this conversation, is basically my whole career has been working with a variety of different organizations to try and help different energy companies, be they large oil majors like Shell in your guys' backyard,
Yep.
or diversified energy companies like Engie or EDF that are very active in France, or in my backyard, some of the electric utilities that deliver power to us. Basically, my whole career has been focused on helping those kinds of companies build business models and products on things like solar, wind, electric vehicles, and batteries. So very much a climate and energy type individual who's worked with a variety of organizations in that space. But the whole angle has always been, how can we channel business interest and value to things like climate and energy? That's been my kind of professional focus and what brought us to EnergyWeb.
Wow. Yeah, especially in this moment in time, I think, or in this age, we of course are moving to another way of producing energy and also distributing. So this is very actual at this moment.
And yeah, we know Shell.
Yeah, we do.
Actually, we also know Engie. So those are very familiar names for us. Do you want to take the next question?
What made you decide to develop or create work at EnergyWeb token or EnergyWeb, and what problems does it solve?
Yeah. So coming off the comment about my career, my previous organization where I worked and where we actually basically spun EnergyWeb out of was a large climate organization called RMI, or Rocky Mountain Institute.
Yep.
And that's where I spent quite a bit of time. And basically what happened back in about 2015 or 2016, I was leading a lot of this work with companies like Shell and many of these other companies, again, trying to just help their energy traders in particular figure out how can they build products and business models around all of these assets and devices that people are starting to buy. So again, like rooftop solar systems, batteries, electric vehicles. And what became really clear really quickly back in about 2015, 2016, was that many of these energy companies, when you talk about digital technology, that's kind of a new thing for them, right? Using email, using CRM tools, those are all very common for enterprises. But when you try to tell a large corporate, hey, what if we had a product where you could network together millions of electric vehicles and optimize when those electric vehicles are or are not using electricity, and then pass that kind of capacity to a trader to make trades on that, their eyes just get cross-eyed, right? That's not the kind of capability that many of these enterprises had. So that was happening on one hand. And on the other hand, I had started to hear about this thing called blockchain and Web3 technologies, and these concepts and principles of decentralization. And it just seemed like a natural fit to try and solve some of these problems we were seeing in the energy sector on one side, and bring in all of this new technology around Web3. So that's really where EnergyWeb came from. In 2017, we got 10 major energy companies to fund the project and get us moving. And since then, we've just been going at it and building new product, building new technology, helping those same corporates actually launch production solutions on these things. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the essence and the root of EnergyWeb.
Wow, that's awesome. And at the center of it all is the sort of prosumer. I'm not sure if you guys coined that term, but that perfectly fits EnergyWeb token, because it's sort of a combination of consumer and producer. And the way I understand EnergyWeb is that it's sort of, like you already sort of explained, it matches sort of demand and supply in a very sort of dynamic system way. So where there's a lack, you fill it. And that is also, of course, with green energy, that, you know, there's this on and off moments with wind or solar or whatever, and then you can sort of match these supply and demand issues. So can you tell us more about this sort of idea, and also
How does it work?
How does it work, and how does it benefit the environment?
Definitely. Well, I wish I could claim that we coined the term prosumer, but unfortunately, I can't make that claim. But indeed, as you said, um, it, it's pretty interesting, especially for an audience that's really focused on crypto. The energy sector, for a variety of reasons, is naturally decentralizing, right? If we don't even talk about crypto, it's just happening. And Nicholas, you said the reason why. Many different people and businesses are simply investing in a variety of these new assets. So things like rooftop solar systems, batteries, heat pumps, electric vehicles. Businesses are investing in large solar farms and wind farms in different places around the world. And what that is doing is indeed creating a new class of an electricity air quote consumer that you called it as a prosumer. So basically, these are individuals or businesses who simply have assets that, instead of being, passive consumers in the energy system, they're just sucking in energy to do something with it. They can actually give back. So some of these assets can actually help to power the grid in case the grid goes down. Some of these assets can actually be used in a way to avoid building additional hard infrastructure. For example, why do we need to build another distribution line because there's a lot of new buildings coming online? When
Yeah.
what if instead we just put batteries and solar in every single one of those buildings, in order for us to not even need to build the distribution line? That's actually a good business case, and that's happening in many different geographies around the world. So the whole concept around these prosumers is that these assets are coming online and they can actually create value for the grid. Now, where EnergyWeb comes in is kind of just on the digital infrastructure to make that happen. So if you have all those batteries, if you have all those different assets out there, or even we can go beyond the grid, we do a lot of work on things like airplanes, so
Yeah.
aviation fuel. It's not electricity, right? So it's a totally different commodity, but some similar challenges in that you have a lot of these different assets out there. So refineries that are producing fuel that is clean for planes. You have the actual planes that are using that fuel. You've got all these different endpoints in these energy systems. And basically what we do is we digitize them. We use a mix of blockchain and self-sovereign identity technologies paired with some traditional Web 2 technologies to basically just digitize all these systems, to make it really easy for all of these businesses and assets to exchange data, send messages to one another, so that they can actually interact in these variety of different ways. So at the highest level, that's what we do. It's basically digital infrastructure for all
Yeah.
of these different supply chains.
Oh.
And also, so you basically matching and you're standardizing, but there's also probably some sort of losers and winners in this sort of transformation, right? So can you tell us a
Definitely.
little bit about sort of who are the winners here, and who might be sort of losing out a little bit?
Yeah. Well, if you kind of look broadly, right, and of course I'm biased because this is the space I've been working in, but we are the winners. We are the
Yeah.
winners here. And the reason is the economics of all these technologies that I've been talking about, especially on the electricity grid side, have just become fantastic over the past 10 years. Electricity from wind and from solar is now, in most places around the world, the cheapest source of electricity out there. Electric vehicles, if you drive an electric vehicle, that's the equivalent of driving and purchasing petrol in Europe for about 80 euro cents per gallon. I can't do the liter conversion off my head, but it's very cheap, right? That's the point I'm trying to make. So the real winner of this big energy transition towards renewables, let's not even talk about climate change, because I know that can be divisive for many people. I really just like to talk about the business case. So the winners here, if this transition towards renewables and efficiency takes place, it's really about benefiting all of us. We spend less money on electricity. We happen to have cleaner air, which is great, and then we also get a more resilient kind of energy system. Instead of being reliant on large centralized plants all around the world, as these more distributed prosumer-based systems come to life, we'll have more opportunities to help the grid become more sustainable and resilient. So we really benefit.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good explanation also. Also very interested in the staking mechanism that EnergyWeb has. Can you explain a little bit to our viewers how it helps to protect the EnergyWeb layer or token?
Definitely. If you'll bear with me, I'll dig in on our technology just a little bit to really explain how it works, and I'll connect it directly to the staking mechanism.
Yeah.
So in this conversation so far, we've discussed a number of different applications that we help energy enterprises build. Talked about aviation fuel. We talked about prosumers with solar on their roof. Let me take a specific example and I'll connect it to staking. So one of the use cases is all about, think of it like peer-to-peer energy trading.
Yeah.
So you have one building with rooftop solar panels and you have another building that doesn't have solar, but basically you want to match electricity produced from the building with solar with that building that doesn't have solar. So in many cases, that work would be done by a proprietary centralized backend server. So data from those two different buildings and assets would be dumped into a server, and we just have to trust that basically there's matching taking place there, right? The key innovation that we bring to the table is something called a worker node network. So instead of that work, again, just matching production and consumption from these two different buildings and assets, instead of that happening in a black box in a centralized server somewhere, we decentralize that. So that computational work is now being performed by a variety of different computers and nodes in a synchronized network so that you can actually see, oh, all of these nodes are performing the identical work, so we can trust that that work is actually being done, and we can trust the results. Basically, that's how our technology works, and if you want to run one of those nodes, you need to stake EnergyWeb tokens. So that's kind of the connective tissue, is that there are dozens of these different applications out there where we've identified real value in work not being done in a black box, where work needs to be done in a way that can be publicly verified or verified by multiple companies. So basically, we make it really easy for enterprises to spin up these worker node networks, and then anybody that holds EnergyWeb tokens, individuals, business, whatever, can stake them and actually run one of these individual nodes and earn rewards for doing so.
Awesome.
And that staking mechanism is called proof of authority, right?
So great question. Let's break it apart even more. So in the kind of broad EnergyWeb ecosystem, because it's not just us, there's a variety of enterprises here, a number of startups, other nonprofits. There are actually two primary blockchains that we work with. One is exactly what you just said. It's the traditional EnergyWeb chain. So this is a proof of authority blockchain that's basically governed by many of these different energy companies that I've been talking about. So it's a public blockchain. Anybody can access the network and use it and build applications on top of it. It's basically a carbon copy of Ethereum, but it has different consensus mechanism. The second blockchain that we just brought to life is something called EnergyWebX. So that's a blockchain that's using substrate technology and actually sits on the Polkadot network. So it's a parachain on the Polkadot network. Importantly, one token. So you can use the same token on the EnergyWeb chain that you use on the parachain on Polkadot. So it's the exact same token. But everything I just described with the worker nodes and the staking, that takes place on EnergyWebX, which is the parachain on Polkadot.
Ah, okay. I see. So this is also very bullish for Polkadot.
I would think so. I mean, they've been great partners to work with, and indeed, we like to think of EnergyWeb as one of the, if not the biggest consortia of real enterprises that are using Web3 technology to solve problems. And we're really excited to be working with, it's nothing to say against Ethereum. Ethereum technology was wonderful for where we started. That was back in 2016. We needed smart contracts. We needed some more flexible, different ways to play with governance. But substrate technology is just really interesting and powerful for pulling off this worker node solution that I described. So we're really excited to be a part of the ecosystem.
Nice.
Understood.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because of course, in this kind of in this field, security is very important. So it's very good to see that EnergyWeb is taking that very seriously, and that you can secure the chain, and also if you participate, you get rewarded in in the same time. I should say.
Yeah, you have a stake in the network, literally.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now a really fun question, one that we are really excited about is you're also pretty active in Holland, and we're of course based in the Netherlands. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of your activities in the Netherlands, and maybe some of the results? And
definitely. So I'll start with a very large global company that is in your backyard. So Shell. So Shell has been one of the first organizations that we've been worked with in the beginning of 20. They were one of the first 10 companies actually stepped forward and said, we think there's something really valuable here at the intersection of sustainability and Web3. And with Shell, we have done probably at this stage dozens of different projects. They have launched an entire what they call registry for tracking sustainable aviation fuel in partnership with Accenture, American Express, and us, called Avalia. And so Shell's Avalia platform is focused on tracking all of these different things as it relates to something called sustainable aviation fuel. Shell's also been very active in that concept of matching 24. They call it matching renewable energy 24/7. That's another topic they've been active. But if I zoom in really specifically on the Netherlands and we talk about power, they're one of the distribution system operators. So this is the utility that runs the kind of medium voltage distribution network to bring the power to your houses and buildings. One company called Stedin is another one of the founding companies of EnergyWeb. They were one of the first 10.
Okay.
Yeah. So very, very active. Stedin's an incredibly forward-thinking and progressive electricity market participant. And with them too, we've done a variety of different projects. Stedin, we've experimented a lot with giving digital identities to devices on their network as a cybersecurity solution.
Wow.
Basically, there's a lot of different routers on the network of these electricity distribution networks, and they're all collecting data. But in many cases, there's some cybersecurity risks there because of how those are architected. So we've overlaid those things with basically self-sovereign digital identities to just bring additional cybersecurity to the network. And then Stedin has also been very active and involved in a variety of experiments having to do with prosumers and peer-to-peer energy trading that we've supported them on over the years. So no, it's been I'd say in general, my experience in the Netherlands is it's really a hotbed of the energy transition, but also crypto and blockchain, and a lot of openness to experimenting with new technology.
Wow. Yeah, we just learned today that Bitfavo is like a very big Dutch exchange, that they have like the most liquidity or volume in Europe. So that's
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So we're doing a good job. So yeah, you already mentioned it a couple of times, but you got the green movement, and at the moment there's some pushback against green movement. How do you see that at EnergyWeb? How do you navigate this sort of transition? Because there's a lot going on, I think it's kind of complicated to sort of do a good job to navigate these tricky issues, right?
Definitely. From my seat, I don't see the energy transition away from a fossil fuel-based economy towards one based on renewables and efficiency. I don't see it going anywhere. And I think the primary reason I look at it like that is because of the fundamental economics. It's just more economically sound to design a global economy on things like renewables and efficiency than power plants that use dinosaur poop to fuel them. That's how fossil fuel plants work, yeah? And the economics have just shifted. I do think there's a question of how quickly that transition is going to happen. And indeed, there is some pushback that's taking place in a variety of different places. I think some of that pushback is fueled by different flavors of disinformation and misinformation, because as we talked about, there are some losers here, right? Many of these industries that have a vested interest in these large centralized plants and facilities existing for years on years, even if they are uneconomic, they clearly stand to lose from a lot of these other technologies come in. So I do think there's a heavy amount of misinformation and disinformation that's being now just put on rocket fire because of all the AI tools that are out there that are helping people build more. But again, there are many data points that are extremely exciting. Over 2/3 of Fortune 500 companies have made and are sticking to and have acted on sustainability and climate commitments. As I said earlier, renewables are now the lowest cost source of electricity in most geographies around the world. And actually, if I go to one other talking point, this year in California, where I'm sitting, the best-selling vehicle in the state is an electric vehicle, right? So the change is happening. I hope it happens faster, but like you said, not everybody's on the same page, and there's definitely a question of how quickly this can accelerate.
Well, I learned that if you get pushback, then you're on the right track, because otherwise it wouldn't be interesting or wouldn't solve anything.
True.
Yeah, so I think it's maybe it's the same in this scene, or in this time.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's also happening at the moment is with Bitcoin, right? People are taking notice that Bitcoin is actually a benefit for green energy and the green energy transition. Are there some interesting synergies between EnergyWeb token and Bitcoin miners, for example, or how do you see sort of the shift in perception on Bitcoin and green energy?
So the short answer is yes. There's a very direct connection between EnergyWeb and Bitcoin. And if I could take a moment, I'll just go ahead and explain it to your listeners. About 18 months ago, we started a project called Green Proofs for Bitcoin. And the whole point of Green Proofs for Bitcoin was we wanted to really help bring a new level of trust and transparency to Bitcoin miners that were actually using renewable electricity to power their mining operations. And for context there, I mean, lots of different news outlets and journalists and organizations, especially at the peak of the bull market back in 2021, lots of coverage about the energy consumption and carbon footprint of the Bitcoin network. And on the other side, you had some miners and other financial organizations that were taking positions in Bitcoin, basically try and make not very transparent claims about how clean the actual Bitcoin network is. There are a variety of different indices out there. The Cambridge index on how much energy is being used by the Bitcoin network is a really interesting one. So there's a bunch of initiatives out there, but what we saw was a real lack of transparent tools to help Bitcoin miners and other financial organizations actually prove how green their operations are. So what we built is this registry called Green Proofs for Bitcoin, and that registry contains a variety of different Bitcoin miners who have gone through an accreditation process, and they basically get accredited as green Bitcoin miners. So we've done that with a bunch of miners. You can find some of the information about this registry online. But I think the really interesting thing and the reason we built this registry, it's not just to help miners have a stamp of approval on their website. On the other side, so if I think about Bitcoin investors, financial organizations, obviously everything just happened with the ETFs. Yeah. One thing we had heard time and time again, although it is a bit quieter now, but I would bet a lot of Bitcoin that this argument is about to come back. Many organizations can't take positions in Bitcoin because of all the ESG related fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So one way that we intend for this registry to be used is for financial organizations to basically build, think of like green Bitcoin derivatives or financial products on top of it. And we're not saying like create a second Bitcoin class or anything like that. All the registry does is enable these financial organizations to build deposits of Bitcoin that come from miners that have been certified to be renewable. So we've done a lot of work on that with some leading Bitcoin miners from all around the world. And there's quite a bit more coming on that this year that we'll be able to talk about publicly in the next quarter or two.
Oh, wow. That's very exciting. Yeah, I really love this subject because I had a lot of private discussions also, of course, about Bitcoin, because people know after 6-7 years that you're in this scene. And they always talked about, Bitcoin's bad for the environment. And I said, it depends. And now it seems that you are creating something to prove that. So that's very awesome.
Well, and looking forward, you already mentioned this year and what's up and coming. Can you tell us a little bit more about any exciting developments within EnergyWeb for the coming years?
Certainly. One of the biggest challenges we've faced as both an organization, but also an ecosystem, and I think you both have probably seen this just in the Web3 space in general, it is very challenging to help enterprises build stuff using Web3 technology.
Yeah.
The user, they can't, many of the companies in our ecosystem hold tokens. Just helping these departments understand how to hold and then stake tokens, let alone think about how to liquidate them. It's just really challenging. And then you start talking about staking for these worker node networks. It's just, how do you do all of this? So one thing that we have just released for all of our members, so this is a core set of customers, is effectively a beta version of something called Launchpad. And this is like a as a service software tool to help these companies spin up all the solutions I've been describing in a couple of days versus a couple of months, which is typically how we've had to work with them. So the biggest thing that we're focused on as an organization is productizing all of these solutions I've been talking about so that we can have a new energy company come in, we can onboard them in a day, and we can help them stand up one of these applications and call it a week, instead
Wow.
of their department having to work with a bunch of our engineers for months and in some cases years to get these things standing up. So really, we are relentlessly focused on this as a service portal, that will be available shortly to the general public. Right now, it's only available to a subset of our customers that we're working with, but it's shortly going to be available to the total public. So there will be a lot of features, a lot of releases on that, but that's really what we're focused on, because even beyond EnergyWeb, one of the biggest challenges for the crypto industry that I certainly see is enterprises just aren't really using it. I mean, forget about the press releases. Everybody's good at doing marketing and press releases in the Web3 space. But when you chip away at that and say, what is this company actually doing? How are they using this? Is it solving problems for them? I don't see a ton of that. And so this is really what we're focused on, is just making it easy for these companies to experiment and then really get their hands dirty with Web3 technology.
So, so you're basically onboarding everyone. You guys are the portal for this transition.
That's what we're trying to. That's what we're trying to help. Yep, exactly. I mean, I should have prepared a demo. Maybe we could do it another time. But it's
Yes.
literally a web
Yes.
page, login, traditional username login, sign up with an account, get an invoice, credit card, and you are building, right? And these are specific applications for energy companies. So it's
And-
not some generic blockchain as a service tool that a variety of vendors have brought out there. That's not what this is. This is, we have really specifically identified some applications that energy companies need, and now they can build their own.
And that's awesome.
Before we went live, we were sort of talking that, you know, we are both sort of big fans of EnergyWeb token. I actually had to sell a little bit of mine, sadly enough. But one of the strange things is, at least for me, is there's not much competition out there, right? I think you guys are the only ones doing this. So is there any competition out there?
I think
that's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah.
There are certainly some other companies experimenting with Web3 technology and that happen to have a token and are working on different parts of the energy transition. But in our world, we are one of the only, I think probably the only organization that's really focused on these applications. Yeah. So there are a few other companies, but really we've become quite specialized because we've been in the market for some time. I think, you know, one challenge for EnergyWeb that you guys have been following this for a while, and perhaps some of your other listeners, we are an enterprise-focused project and ecosystem, right? Our entire change model is about getting energy companies to change the way they do business and use these solutions versus a direct-to-retail sort of DeFi type projects. And I think that just makes the marketing and mass adoption a little bit trickier and more nuanced. So it's definitely something we're continuing to work on, and we do have quite a big push on that this year. One of our big marketing objectives this year is to bring as many individuals and businesses into this ecosystem as possible, mainly because of these worker nodes. If we can have thousands upon thousands of people and businesses running these worker nodes and supporting all these applications, that actually is a stronger case for us to bring more enterprises into this ecosystem to say, look, it already exists. So that's what we're trying to do this year.
And I love what you just explained right before this part about how how easy you make it for those companies to to onboard EnergyWeb, if I may call it in that way.
Yep.
Because then you put all the knowledge that you gathered over the years and make it so simple that people really don't know that they're using blockchain in this case, or what they're using, but that it does work, and in a very, very revolutionary way, I think.
Yeah, and I think what's also really sort of powerful from EnergyWeb is that you sort of give, like you said, it's sort of peer-to-peer energy economy, basically. So you're giving power to the people that they can actually sell their excess energy to people who need it, and
Or companies.
you get these sort of people-based power stations. I think you even have a term for that. I forgot the term. But I think that's really sort of revolutionary and super cool. And you're basically doing the same thing as with the Bitcoin miners that are sort of stabilizing the grid. That's basically what you're doing with EnergyWeb also.
Indeed, and many of the Bitcoin miners who we've gone through the certification process with, that's a component. So if those miners are participating in what's called a demand response program, so that's basically, hey, we'll turn down our operation if the grid is stressed. that's absolutely part of the criteria that's evaluated for those miners.
Because with these sort of electric coal industries, they the booting up of these energy stations when there's demand issue is basically causing the most sort of pollution and CO2 emissions, right?
Yes, ramping them can be very expensive. And that's the whole point of these prosumers, just to tie it back. If there's a world in which all of these different electric vehicles and batteries and solar systems are networked together, those assets can be orchestrated and coordinated in such a way to balance the grid, instead of, as I like to say, humans sitting in a cement box turning up and down thermal power plants.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what I really love about it, and that's why actually I got into it because of Chico Crypto. He was on very early, and I followed him a lot. And I'm not sure how Jan got into it, but yeah. And here we are,
the internet. Yeah,
talking to the CEO. So that's really awesome. But or do you want to take?
No, you can do a question.
Well, crypto is of course a very sort of evolving, very dynamic space. For people inside crypto, it's like a circus. But how do you navigate the challenges with regulation, adoption? You already sort of mentioned marketing. Like how do you navigate these issues, because it's a very challenging landscape, and how do you sort of tackle these issues moving forward?
So I can speak on, for EnergyWeb, our approach has been directly with the regulators. So before we even came to market in the US with some of these enterprises and these different token models, we had many discussions and back and forths with a variety of different legal experts with US financial regulators. So it wasn't a kind of, oh, let's hide and see what's going to happen. It was a proactively and directly engage. And that's because of who we work with. If we did not do that, why would these organizations trust us to actually bring Web3 to enterprise? So our entire outlook has been very progressive and just go forward and work with regulators. I will say, moving beyond EnergyWeb 2, the European kind of regulatory framework for thinking about crypto and Web3 is far more advanced than what's happening in my backyard. And we do work with energy companies from all around the world. And so one of my hopes is that we actually get some regulatory clarity in the US. The Bitcoin ETF was great, right? That's a product that is there. But in terms of, what are the different classifications for these different wallets, for these different worker nodes in our world, but also for other crypto projects, that's something that's really going to be needed, or we're going to have challenges making this scale beyond where it is today. And it's my hope that by providing proof points, by showing to these regulators, hey, here are real businesses using Web3 technology to solve real problems, that's going to help on that journey.
It will propel us into the future if they do accept and supply regulatory clarity.
And sort of when you look at that landscape, are you more optimistic or more pessimistic right now?
I'm very optimistic internationally, for sure. And again, I think the European and Swiss legislation is paving the way, and we do a lot of work in those geographies. In the US, I mean, me a year ago never thought a Bitcoin ETF would have been approved. Just because I've gotten a little bit skeptical engaging with US financial regulators over the past several years. Now, I don't know. It's time's going to tell. This election is going to be a pretty big deal, the federal elections in the US. So ask me in November.
I'm always optimistic, so I will say I'm very optimistic in the long run.
And when you sort of look at the crypto market in general, you already sort of mentioned Bitcoin and the ETFs. It was a shame with Grayscale, but that's over now. When you sort of look forward, what is your sort of take on where things might go? Do you expect like a very bullish year, or do you think we have to wait a little bit longer? Or can you talk about that? Or
I mean, for me, just looking at because I've now been lucky or unlucky, I don't know, enough to work in crypto since 2017, many of these different cycles. All I can say is, I mean, the halving cycles do seem to have an absolute real impact. And that's what we're coming up on. And I would also say, just from having conversations with a variety of different other crypto projects kind of outside the Bitcoin and EnergyWeb ecosystem, there are a lot of smart people that have stuck around in crypto. There are some more smart people coming in, and the general mood is certainly bullish if I compare to this time last year. And I know that we shouldn't be making financial decisions on sentiment,
Absolutely.
but you guys have been here too, and you know that those
Yeah.
are indicators of what's going on. So I don't know. Yeah.
And maybe in another way, but how do you see the technology? So the blockchain
Yeah.
technology
Good
moving
question.
forward in
Yeah.
maybe a couple of years or 10 years from now?
In my experience, the core blockchain and Web3 technologies that we have are what we need to create value for enterprises in particular. I'm sure more tech will be built. There's a variety of unbelievable innovations happening at the bleeding edge. But if you step back, these technologies are useful right now. I think the trick is getting them in these companies' hands, which is a bit more of on the technology side, user interface, user experience, business kind of flow problem, but then also a business development and communications challenge.
Yeah.
That's where I think we are right now. That's the big lift, not necessarily on core tech development. And of course, as you guys know, the core tech's going to keep moving at just an absolute blistering pace with innovators building solutions for innovators. These enterprises are 4 or 5 years behind them. So the real trick is more about helping them understand what's possible today.
Well, you guys, you're building the future, I think, in that way.
And you guys are at the center.
Yeah.
I think what you said earlier about being proactive. That's one of the things that I also like about EnergyWeb token. I'm also a big Chainlink fan. And, that they are sort of the builders that are sort of in behind the scenes. They're building these incredible networks and
applications,
onboarding big companies and that kind of stuff. They're not doing much marketing. I mean, everybody knows Chainlink by now, but nobody knows EnergyWeb token. So
we're going to change that.
Yeah, this is really amazing stuff what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and we'll also be pushing on the marketing front with some larger events, trying to help everybody understand what all these products are, how they work. And that's a big focus for us this year. But thanks so much for the kind words.
Well, we want to really thank you to come on a Bitcoin Live, and of course we'll help you guys with sharing the knowledge about EnergyWeb token, and we would gladly have you back when you're possible, when you have time to tell us more about these awesome developments that your company brings to Web3.
Yes. Excellent. Well, thank you guys for having me.
The pleasure was all ours, and we wish you all the best and up for a good year.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Have a great evening.
Have a good evening.